I'm Matt Reynolds, and this is my podcast.
I can do the job, but running the business is quite difficult. What a lot of tradesmen lack, and I was probably one of them, is business skills.
I don't mind making mistakes. You learn from your mistakes.
Information is all around you in the minds of people that work beside you.
Welcome back to the Trench Talk podcast. I'm your host, Matt Reynolds, and for this first episode of 2019, I spoke with Josh Kelly. Josh led the marketing team at one of the top 5 plumbing companies in the United States, Phoenix-based Parker & Sons. They employ over 500 people and now do in excess of 100 million in business each year. I must say this interview was a little eye-opening for me. I certainly got inspired by it. And if you're a business owner in the service space, particularly in a trade-based business, this next hour or so might be the most important information you could know as you get set and focused for a big 2019. The idea of these discussions, for those of you joining us for the first time, is to go into the trenches of achievement and talk not with people who are orchestrating from some lofty perspective, but to those high performers who are actually in the trenches, honing their craft. That has included guests from the worlds of business, sport, and entertainment, all of whom are on the front lines doing amazing things. Off the back of his success at Parker & Sons, Josh founded and is now building RevuKangaroo, spelt R-E-V-U, Kangaroo, all one word. RevuKangaroo, a tech company for service businesses. Basically, Josh has systematized a major part of the online strategy that has and is propelling the growth at Parker & Sons. We jumped around a little bit in this conversation, but we covered a lot, including growing Parker & Sons past the $100 million mark, some of his ideas about recruiting, training, managing and incentivizing staff, including the 3 promises he makes to every employee. We talked about profit margins. Josh is completely open with his numbers, which I think are going to surprise you. Why middle-sized companies in the United States are disappearing and why Australia, and by extension, I guess, other countries like us, are likely to follow the exact same path. Business reviews, how the online game is changing and how RevuKangaroo is helping service businesses dominate in this space. We covered a bunch of tips for getting business reviews, how to ask, who to ask, etc., and of course, much, much more. There's an absolute ton of practical business tips, ideas, and strategies in this episode. To find out more about Josh and his current work, head to RevuKangaroo.com. If you enjoy Trench Talk, head to xrm.com.au/podcast and opt in for the newsletter. We'll make sure you're notified when every episode of the show is released. A quick mention about the next episode of Trench Talk. I travelled to the Booktopia head office in Sydney to sit down with founder Tony Nash. We discussed growing his online bookstore, Booktopia, from a $10 a day budget through 100 million in annual sales, and we will have that one for you in the next week or so. Don't forget to check out RevuKangaroo.com and enjoy my chat with Josh Kelly. Josh, thanks for doing this.
No worries. Glad to be here, bud.
Now, I'm in my home office in Melbourne this morning, and just for listener context, where are you today?
I am out in Phoenix, Arizona, out in the United States, at my work office.
So it would be the afternoon, right?
It is. It is 2:30 in the afternoon here.
Now, I want to quickly start with the barbecue question, which I often do. You're at a barbecue, you start talking to someone for the first time, you maybe have a beer or two, and eventually the question gets asked. What do you do, and how do you answer that question?
So that used to be really simple. It used to be, I have an HVAC and plumbing business, so I help with air conditioning and plumbing. Now it's a little bit more complicated. Now I do some consulting, I do some speaking events, but I not only have an HVAC and plumbing business, but I also have a software business that helps companies grow their business.
I wanted to start with the future, I should say, because I think there's no doubt that technology is becoming more and more part of our everyday lives. And for businesses, that definitely means that we need to change the way we operate. And because the US is sometimes a little bit ahead of where we are here in little Australia, I thought I'd ask you the recent changes that you've seen from a technology perspective, and then maybe forward what you see for the next 5 or 10 years in how businesses need to change the way that they operate in a general sense.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not that Australian companies are behind; they're just slower adapters. But the truth is, the whole industry is slow adapters. So there's entire other industries that have blown up, drastically changed. But for the most part, we're doing business the same way we did 15 years ago, minus cell phones, right? We moved past the pager phase where you had to stop at a payphone to figure out where you're going, but not a whole lot further than that compared to other industries. So here in the United States, there's been a huge change over the last really about 10 years. And it's really come with automations, systems, thinking much larger scale. It was not, when we bought the business literally 13 years ago, it's a $6.5 million business. $100 million businesses were unfathomable. Now, if you're not shooting for 100 million, you're not really a big player here in the United States. And Australia will end up being that way too. The whole industry shifted where there's still small players. The large players has almost entirely squeezed out the middlemen, the middle-sized guys, and it's just because the middle-sized guys can't compete. So there's a lot of huge changes that's went through the industry in the last 5 to 10 years, and drastically changed not only the capabilities of companies but how they operate and how they think. As far as what's coming, there's a lot of stuff coming. If you think we're automated and have a lot of processes now, it's going to become more that way, but it's not just going to be us competing. It will not be that long in the future where manufacturers sell equipment online, where Google plays in our space. There's just too much money. Where Pulse, everybody knows here in the United States, a company called Pulse, essentially is Uber for home services. There will be someone who comes and figures it out. That doesn't mean the industry is going away. They still need to hire great people. And they'll end up working with really large companies, but the gap between the haves and the have-nots will just slowly become larger and larger.
And we spoke just briefly the other day, kind of setting up this recording, but I like the way you explain it with the way that people actually look for a plumber, and they used to go to the yellow pages and flick through, and you'd see in front of you, I guess, 20, 30, 40, 50 different options, right, depending on how many pages that you want to turn. But that's really changed now. We've got one yellow pages. It's called Google, and if you're not at the top, then you don't get the work. Is that a fair assessment?
That's an absolutely fair assessment. It used to be anyone with a little bit of money could compete at some level and get some market share. Now, really, there's only 3 players on Google at any given time. There's lots of people paying for every individual call, but that's not scalable. It's not a way to grow your business effectively. You have to do lots more than that. A lot of companies do just buy calls, but they struggle with growth. Google has become where it's at, and there's some other places too. Here in the United States, Yelp could be big, Facebook can be big, depending on where you're located. There are other review websites, but I mean, it's like 90% Google for service-based businesses. And the scary thing is, Google's moving into our space. So they're slowly taking away all of our ability to even be there naturally. And instead, we have to go directly through them and, of course, pay them a percentage.
And do you mean that by they hold like your map listing and that sort of thing, so that will come to the top? Is that what you mean by they're coming into our space?
So in the United States, they're making a big push, and they rolled it nationwide probably a year ago, and they're starting to move into other countries across the world. Something called Google Services. So essentially, the most prominent placing, it says, "Hey, here's 3 companies Google recommends," and instead of being able to buy that, you have to have a deal worked out with Google, and it's no longer pay per click where you pay $40 for a tune-up call. Now you're paying 10% of the total call, whatever that is. Oh, and by the way, you have to have every single person approved by Google that goes out to houses. Oh, and you have to have a special contract with them. Oh, and you pay an annual fee as well. Oh, and they check up on you, and there's a lot of parameters, and it's much more complicated. They get to control the process because ultimately they know, eventually, if they recommend bad companies and it doesn't work out consistently, then customers will try to find another way to find those companies, right? Because that just didn't work for them. So Google's trying to control the process and get a larger piece of the pie, and it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better.
Well, it's a big pie to try and grab a piece of the services business. So I can understand why they'd want to do it. Now, the elimination of these companies that get stuck in the middle,
Yes.
that's simply because they can't afford to be in a relationship, or they can't pay for a relationship. They can't afford a relationship with Google, which means an end to basically the leads that they're going to get, right?
To a point. So it's a bunch of things. That's certainly a piece of it, right? But so there will always be small companies, what we call here in the United States, chuck in a truck, where it's you got one or two trucks, and you can be very competitive on pricing because you don't have overhead. Now, medium-sized companies can't compete with them on price. That's just not realistic, right?
Yeah.
And then there's large companies like us here in Phoenix, where we can afford to do a lot of advertising. We can afford to buy those relationships with Google. We can afford to buy those relationships with like a Costco or Home Depot or Amazon or Pulse that those middle companies can't. So they can't really afford or have the ability to market with larger companies because they can get pushed around. So they're stuck in this middle space where they can't really compete on price. They can't really compete with marketing. How do they compete? Now, it's not that they will be totally eliminated. If you have a really solid retention system, you have a really solid cross-selling system, and you have a grassroots guerrilla marketing campaign that's bringing in some clients, you could survive there. But it's going to be harder and harder every year because those big companies, I mean, we went from 6.5 million to 103 million just here in Phoenix. And it's not like it's slowing down, it's picking up pace because we have more money than the market, right? Our margins are getting better. Our relationships are getting better because we have the ability to push people around. That's only going to become stronger years and years from now. So those middle guys, they're just going to have to be much more creative. This is an opportunity right now, especially in Australia, where you have the opportunity to be those big companies because there aren't really huge companies dominating the marketplace in most places. Even what I would consider huge companies for Australia, they're not owning the space like they are here in the United States. It will happen. And if you can get in that top 2 or 3 companies, you'll end up being set for life, more or less.
So you almost need to get big enough, quick enough to be able to afford those relationships with the or virtually the search engines, right? That's the race that's on right now.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, the thing is, you have to be a big fish in a small pond. That's always been my marketing strategy. It's always what I've done. I would never, if I'm buying a radio station, I'm never going to be the third biggest AC company, like for number of spots and market share and control of that station. I wouldn't buy that. It wouldn't make sense because you can't win at that. You're just reinforcing other brands. You have to be the biggest on what you're buying, right? And that can be something as small as direct mail or owning a neighborhood or owning a certain association, right? All of these are things small. You could dominate as a small, be a big fish in a small pond. But as you grow, those ponds become larger and larger and larger, and those small ponds are slowly starting to disappear.
Yeah, I can see that happening. And I talk to a lot of different people in the plumbing and trade sector, and I think if we're really honest about it, we don't really appreciate maybe how fast this could actually happen. But when you look at another industry it's happened to, and we always go to the taxi industry, right? And how Uber has come in. Really, if you're going to start a private driving service, then you're in competition with Uber for that number one spot on Google, right? So the question is, how do you beat them? Well, they've got very deep pockets, so you've got to find another way. And as you're saying, that just gets harder and harder and harder as they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And essentially, they just commoditize the labor component of it, right? All of these big conglomerates, be it Amazon, Facebook, Uber, they all need worker bees, right? They need someone to do the actual manual stuff. They can kind of take care of the rest. And the best way, of course, to, I guess, grow for them is to have, in a sense, all of those worker bees kind of competing against each other. So they, the cream of the crop kind of defaults out as who they get, right? So I know that's a very holistic view, but you can certainly see that playing out. I think you're on the money there.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little different, right? Because the truth is, if you have a driver's license, you could be an Uber driver for the most part, right? You can't be a mess, and there's certain parameters beyond that. But anyone has the potential of being an Uber driver. Whereas a plumber or an air conditioner guy or an electrician or a roofer, right? There are skills associated. It takes time and effort. Not anyone could walk in and be a plumber, right? It's just not realistic.
Yes.
So there is some skill labor part of it. That, I think what will end up happening is like Uber, literally in San Francisco, starting in January, is starting to do plumbing. There's a company, Impulse, based out of San Francisco, that does this really right now, right? What they'll figure out eventually is they're not going to be able to effectively commoditize the actual team members, is what I would call it, right? Or contractors, right? To a point, because there is such a large gap on what people expect for a driver. If that driver got you to point A to point B, that's good enough. That is not good enough for a plumber. I mean, there's a lot more skill sets into it. So what will end up happening is they'll end up working with companies like Parker and Sons, us in Phoenix, and they'll say, "Hey, you take all of our calls, and you run them all because we know they'll be done right, and we'll work a special relationship with you, and then we'll be tied at the hip together, and that's a win for them because they don't have to track people down anymore. They don't have to hire people. They don't have to worry about the quality, and it will be a gigantic win." So I think the commoditizing of the actual labor force is not going to be as clear cut as like Uber is, but it's going to happen at some point where like an Uber like company will come in and start dominating people like us. And we have to be aware of that, and we have to be set up properly. This can be an opportunity if you're set up right. And a lot of people worry that the margins would actually disappear in that. I don't think they will. I think you'll just have to set your pricing in a different way.
So, do you see Parker and Sons, your company, growing a lot more as this happens? I mean, you're already the biggest in the Phoenix area, right?
Yeah, we're one of the largest in the United States, maybe the largest for a single city, because we're just here in Phoenix.
And just to be clear, that is a service and install business, right? You're not in the construction space at all?
Yeah, we don't do any commercial, no new construction. So it's all residential replacement repair.
So in comparison to Australia, I believe the biggest company here in construction, for the most part, employs around 400 plumbers. You have right over 450?
About 500 team
Oh,
members.
you have nearly 500?
Yeah, nearly 500 team members.
And you're in one city?
Yes.
So any tradie
And you want to
listening...
hear something crazy? We have about 5% market share here.
5% market share.
Phoenix is a big city, but it's not that big a city. It just tells you how much money there really is.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think anyone, a lot of traders in Australia listening to this as they're driving along, have probably just driven off the road at those numbers because I didn't actually...
What's the exchange rate, too? We should probably look that up.
It's like around 80, roughly. I mean, it sort of hovers around there.
So like 100 million US dollars is 80 million Australian dollars?
No, it's the other way around.
So it'd be 125 essentially.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's even bigger than we first thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is just that is simply crazy. So, and you see the profit margins increasing and your business expanding as these changes come into effect.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, you got to think about it, right? If a company that has 10 trucks goes to a distributor, do you think they get the same pricing I do?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Do you think they get the same quality of plumbers we do? You know what I mean? Like everything changed. So on an individual basis, maybe 1-to-1, yes. But the fact is, I can keep plumbers busy year round. I give them more opportunities for growth and expansion than anywhere else can. I give them more benefits. I pay more. But it's because there's more set up for success. I can do things that other people can't do in this market. And because of that, it's a lot easier to recruit.
So I wanted to actually ask about recruiting, but Parker and Sons, was that your dad's business? Can we talk through a little bit of the journey about how you found your way into the business?
Yeah, so my father actually, if you know companies over here, he was a VP for a company called Roto-Rooter, which is a huge, rooting company, so plumbing company.
Yeah, it's
Here in
huge,
the United States, a franchise. And then he worked for a company called Service America and then a company called Blue Dot, which is a consolidation company. And kind of tripped into Parker and Sons. We bought the business about 13 years ago. He is the CEO. I ran the marketing and did some of the operations. I started the business right after, more or less after college. I had one job in between where I worked for ESPN for about a year and a half. But then started working for essentially my father. And the deal was, hey, if you help me get a piece of the business and he'll help me set up a marketing firm, which is really what I did was marketing at the time. I've obviously expanded since then. And we took, when I started in, we were about $6.5 million business and then grew it to, 103, 104 this year, or 125 for Australia.
And that's over a 13-year period?
Yeah, 13 years.
So it begs the question, how have you done that? Because it's a pretty amazing growth rate.
Yeah, we grew about 30% kind of minimum every year. Some years we grew a little bit more. There's a lot of things. So it's not like I just did this. You know what I mean? It's not like a silver bullet. However, there are some trends that, it's not just us, but people kind of across the world that's growing at that kind of rate in the service industry there. Step one is always making more money off the customers that you already have. Getting a good retention strategy, getting a good cross-selling system, increasing your average ticket, setting up more larger jobs. That's the easiest and most effective way to make money by far. Besides just raising your prices, that's a great way to make more money too. Then after that, we started marketing, and we talked about briefly like owning being a big fish in a small pond. When we first started, we did not have gigantic budgets. We were not anywhere near the biggest in Phoenix. So when I bought stuff, I wanted to buy radio stations that other people weren't on, because if I was the only voice, then I get to be the dominant voice. I owned neighborhoods. I owned associations. I tried to buy things that I could only dominate. And as we grew, I ended up getting more calls in, right? Because we were just marketing really effectively. We have some really great strategies on how to do that if we want to go down the rabbit hole. And then when they called, every call was worth more money to me because I got a really good job at making the most out of every single customer. It became a snowball effect. Now that I'm making more money, I also have more money to advertise. And now I have more money to advertise and get more calls, and I make more money at those calls than we were before. And so it just became bigger and bigger and bigger, and our growth just got exponential. I mean, we grew 20 million US dollars this year.
That's very impressive.
Kind of terrifying.
Yeah. Do you ever worry? I mean, that it's going to get too big to control? Like, is that a concern of yours?
I mean, not too big to control. You certainly run into some quality issues occasionally, but we've gotten really good handle on that. But every year it's an issue like, hey man, can we really keep this train on the tracks? But it's just a constant sprint to keep up with the business, more or less. It was a concern at first. Now we've kind of gotten used to scrambling at all times.
And you told me that you're pretty open with your profit.
Yeah.
You talk about that. Do you want to go into that just a little bit? Because that was eye-opening even for me in the industry.
Yeah. So now we do HVAC and plumbing. We do a little bit of electrical now too. So if you're talking about a blended number between the three kind of industries in our business, you're looking at about 18%.
And that's a net profit.
That's a net profit.
I think there'd be a lot of companies, certainly here in Australia, that would be very, very happy to have that higher profit margin. Now, you got pretty good early on, clearly, about squeezing every drop out of everything that you did, which then obviously led to money to expand. And just talking on sheer scale, across the departments you deal with, what is it, about 500 phone calls a day? Is that right?
So, like our busiest day this summer, now we're in Phoenix and it's the middle of summer. I think we took 1,200 calls in a day.
1,200, God.
Yeah. On average, we're probably running 400 to 500 calls every single day.
400 to 500. Okay, so anything that you do 400 to 500 times, you touched on quality just before as you scale. There's got to be some sort of systems that you've built around that, right, to take care of it. Because even if you do everything at 99% right, you take 500 calls a day, you still have 5 that go bad, right? So
correct.
How have you, I mean, apart from, I guess, putting a lot of people in the room and giving them headsets and telephones, how have you actually put that together?
So it's one of those things where scale gives you the ability to do things that other people can't, right? So obviously we have really amazing software that we use. We have really amazing follow-up systems like our software system, asking for reviews, feedback, referrals, all that fun stuff. We also have a full-time in-house trainer. How many companies could afford to pay someone a good amount of money just to do ride-alongs and do training every single day? We do videos for training every single day. We have the ability, because of our size, to add layers that other people can never add. And because of that, we have a really, really serious training program. And that's how we eliminate most, if not the issues. And we recruit very effectively. People really we have like a waiting list for people trying to work with us because we have the ability to keep them busy and make them a lot of money. And the truth is, if you have a really strong training program and you hire really great employees, a lot of your problems, if not all, more or less disappear over time, right? So there's a lot of systems, there's a lot of checks and balances that we do, and we could go into the nitty gritty if you want to ask me a specific question. But there's a lot that we do that other people can't. They actually can, but they just don't have that thought process, right? A lot of people, would never hire an in-house salesperson just to train people, and maybe that doesn't make sense. But there are services like jam sessions where you could get with people like me on the phone once a month, and with even bigger industry leaders, and they'll give you your secrets and then actually execute it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So I guess you've become an employer of choice, right? If you've got people waiting to work for you, because that's certainly a huge issue in Australia. I mean, we have a real shortage of tradesmen anyway, which doesn't help the situation when you're trying to find staff. But that's a big problem. So you've kind of turned that around, and you do things so well for your employees that even if they come only, I guess, for a certain amount of time and work for you and then leave, they're leaving a better person than what they start. Is that kind of the thinking behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk to you like about our 3 promises.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
So we do 3 promises for any person that we hire, right? So at a certain size, you just become. I mean, literally, there's been times where I'm walking to the office and a new employee will stop me and like, "Can I help you, sir?" And they think I'm like a customer trying to walk through the office, right? It's like, no, that's my office right there, right? So we institute something we call the 3 promises. So anytime someone gets hired, generally it's going to be with Paul, occasionally with me, it could be with Daryl, but hopefully with Paul, which is my father, he's the CEO, is going to meet with every single new employee and he's going to make 3 promises to them. And we do this multiple times, right? Promise number 1 is, hey, I promise, I will make the promise to you that whatever you are, so you're a plumber, you're a CSR, someone answers the phone, you're an accountant, whatever it is, by the time you leave here, and everyone leaves eventually, hopefully it's for retirement, but everyone leaves, you will be a better plumber. I promise you that. Everybody kind of understands that, and then you explain that we do that because I'm going to provide you more training than anyone else is ever going to provide you. I'm going to give you more opportunities. I'm going to teach you things and give you skill sets that you wouldn't get anywhere else. I also promise that you're going to be a better person by the time you leave here. Now, a lot of people like raise their eyebrows, don't know exactly what that means. And here's what that means. A lot of the training that we do are communication. It's about being a happier person. It's about quality of life, because if you're a happy person, a happy plumber, customers like you better. You make more money, and we make more money. So a lot of what we teach are going to be life skills, how to communicate with not just customers, but maybe your wife, maybe your family. So I promise by the time you leave here, you'll be a better person too. And number 3 is I promise you'll be in a better financial position than what you are right now. And I can promise you that because I'm going to pay you very effectively. I'm going to make sure that you work all throughout the year. You're not going to have slow times compared to other companies. And you're going to get more opportunities than you get anywhere else. Now, I'm going to make these 3 promises to you, but you have to make a promise back to me. You have to be willing to learn, and you have to be willing to work. If you do those 2 things, I promise you all 3 of those things will happen, right? Now, here's what I've done. I've set expectations. I've made myself memorable. Now they know who Paul is, at the very least. Every single employee does, right? Which is important. And now I've set up an exit strategy. So when that person leaves, they get an exit interview. Guess what 3 questions we ask?
Did they happen? Yeah.
Yeah, did those 3 happen, right? And almost exclusively, almost without exception, they say, oh, yeah, no, I'm a better plumber. Yeah, for sure, absolutely. You know what? I am a better person. I feel much better. Like, I'm much happier. Oh, yeah, I'm making way more money than ever did before. And that's like, well, then why are you leaving?
Yeah.
and sometimes you can say people right then and there. And then, sometimes it's a month later, right? I don't believe in pride in business, right? You always make exceptions for the exceptional. They used to have a policy where if they left, hey, they were gone. We don't hire them back. I don't believe that anymore. A lot of people make mistakes. And if they're really great people, I want them back. That's the truth, right? So we reach out to people all the time that's been gone for a month and just casually say, hey, We are just talking about you. Kind of miss you. Wish you were still here. And a lot of times, it's just a pride point is the only reason that they're not back with you, right? They don't want to admit that they made a mistake. So if you're willing to come to them, all of a sudden you've got that great plumber right back on your team.
So even after they leave, you continue that relationship and reaching out to them. That's, well, clearly very smart.
Even if that guy doesn't come back, he knows other plumbers. All plumbers know other plumbers, period.
Yeah, they sure do.
So build a relationship, build the like, and they'll recruit for you.
Is there a trend in this environment that you've created and the culture that you've created as to why people do leave? Is it predominantly retirement, as you said?
I mean, I wish it was retirement, but people leave all the time for all different reasons. Some for retirement, some because they want to move, some because of family issues, some because they think the grass is greener. Or the truth is, we're not a perfect fit for every person either. We're going to ask you to work a lot of hours. Now, we're going to pay you really effectively for that, right? But some people don't want to work those hours, right? And that's okay. We're flexible with hours. That's really important for the young generation now. You have to be very flexible with hours if you want to recruit effectively, meaning they get to pick their own schedule, which I know a lot of people have trouble wrapping their head around. But I don't care if they pick their own schedule as long as they're working enough hours. Or like here at Parker and Sons, Christmas. Christmas, people fight over Christmas schedules because they know every single call on Christmas is a money call. No one calls for tune-ups or a dripping faucet on Christmas, right? So it's just creating culture, and people leave for lots of reasons. But we do a pretty good job of retention for our industry. We do a really good job of keeping people busy year round, which for like HVAC air conditioning is very difficult to do. And I could break this down and go into so far into details and minutia, but you just have to have a retention strategy. It's no different than customers. It is way more expensive to get a new customer than it is to keep an existing customer and to make more money off the existing customer. The exact same thing is true of team members, right? It is way easier and more effective to make your current team members really amazing and keep them than it is to find new ones. That being said, you should always replace.
Yeah, no, it does make perfect sense. And just the sheer time that you'd save doing it that way, in addition to the money, obviously is working very, very well for you. Are you recruiting weekly, daily? Like, how often are you bringing in new staff?
Always. So, I'm a big fan of ranking people, and it's done for competition and it's done in a loving way. But the truth is, we got 120 AC techs, right? They're listed from 1 to 120 in order. If you're 120, you should not be comfortable. Because if I find someone I think it could be in the top 50, I will replace you.
So that's like
Period.
You run like a hierarchy, like on a board, like one name under the other. Is that how you do it?
Oh yeah. Publicly display everything, share everything. We know what everybody here knows what their goals are, what they need to be at, what's expected of them, when you're below and above on an individual basis.
Can you tell me something about your current number one technician? What are they like? How did they get to number one? And what are they doing that keeps them right now in that spot?
So number one bounces back and forth, but there's only a few of them that stay there, right? And that's pretty common with most companies. In fact, probably all. But they all have the same characteristics, right? It's not necessarily the most technical person in the world, because they're often not. They're really good at talking with customers. They're really confident. They're relaxed. They are a sponge for what you teach them. They're constantly learning, constantly improving themselves, and they're very thorough. So when I say thorough, if they're in there for a water heater, right, you better believe they're checking to see if there's a water softener. They're checking underneath the sink. They're checking the toilets. They're checking the whole house to see if there's other potential issues that they could save that customer from having to deal with down the road. And by doing that and doing that effectively and communicating it well, all of a sudden that one water heater turned into 3 separate things in the same house. By the way, there's no drive time, and it's all extra money for everybody, right? And you've done a great job with the customer, right? Because if that toilet leaks all over the floor a week later, I would say that's that plumber's fault. Even if they never looked at the toilet, it's their job to be thorough and check the whole house.
And how do you deal with, I assume you have fault every now and again. Does the employees take responsibility for that? Do they have to go back and and fix it themselves. How do you deal with those
Yes.
things that would have to come up, I guess, from time to time?
Overwhelmingly, they go out back by themselves. Sometimes the customer will request not to have that person,
Oh, sure.
which happens. It's pretty rare. In which case, we have another technician do it, and we charge back the original technician.
Oh, you charge them back. Okay, so they pay for it either way, right?
Correct.
Interesting. Okay.
And that's pretty common practice.
Okay, in the US market.
Yes.
Oh, there you go. I've actually I'm not sure if that's common here in Australia. If it is, I don't know about it. But that's a great way. Well, a great way to have people claim responsibility for their work, right?
Absolutely. It becomes all on them, which it should be, because if they didn't fix it properly or they had an issue, they have every opportunity to call and get help during the call. And if they chose not to do that, that is their fault.
Oh, and fair enough. I can see why that would work. What's the quickest time that someone's gone from starting with you to the number one spot?
It's kind of surprising to really think about, but most of the time, your best guys, and I think you'll find this if you thought about your own business, are generally your newest guys. And the reason is they're doing everything you ask them to. Everybody plays this game with like how much, how little. So with everything they do, right? Like when you first start, they don't worry about, let's see what I can get away with and still get the sale. They want to do everything they can to make sure they get the sale because they want to impress you. And then as time goes by, they're like, you know what, maybe I don't really need to do that. I don't really need to do that. And occasionally, they'll still get the sales most of the time, but occasionally they lose a sale that they would have gotten, right? And the truth is, everybody plays this, everybody in life. Like, I am not the how much can I get done for doing the dishes. Like, I do just enough to pass my girlfriend's inspection.
Yeah.
That's it. You know what I mean? That's it's not important to me, right? But with business, I play it the opposite. Right? It's how much can I do to guarantee this works, right? But everyone eventually falls into that how little can I do minutia, right? It's just human nature, right? So you have to really fight against that. But sometimes you'd be surprised, your newest employees are generally your best employees because they're using every single tool in the toolbox every single time.
And you let the younger, well, I guess you let everybody, but the younger generation certainly wants to, in a lot of cases, set their own schedules, and you support that.
Yes.
How do you manage that? Because the service business is can be very reactive at times. Obviously, in Phoenix, when it gets hot, you're going to have more calls, right? As you said before. So how do you manage that and make sure you have the staff to cover those high volume periods?
I mean, it's not easy. It's a game you have to play. With millennials nowadays, many of them would rather have the free time to go watch their kids play soccer every Tuesday, afternoon, than making an additional 20% more money. Money is less important to them than time period and the value of time. So if that Tuesday soccer game is really important to them, it's important that you make an effort to do it. Does that mean that he can make every possible soccer game? No, not always. But as many as you possibly can. You have to set yourself up to give them what they want. Their customers, ultimately, your team members are your customers. And your actual customers are your team members' customers. Period, right?
Yes.
You would never tell your end customer, you know what, I don't want to do this right now. I know it's inconvenient for you, but I'm going to come out at 10 o'clock at night instead.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that just doesn't make sense. You go to customers when they want you. And if that means 10 o'clock at night, then sometimes it means you go at 10 o'clock at night, right? You've got to do the same thing for your team members. You have to give them the ability to get what they want. Otherwise, you'll never be able to keep them long term.
No, it makes perfect sense. So once you understand their schedule, you obviously have them commit to it on a consistent basis, but you have the flexibility to move when you need to.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as long as you tell the story of why they can't, it's never okay to say, like, no, you can't have Tuesday afternoons off. That doesn't work well for people. People want to understand why. But if you tell them the story of why this Tuesday or for the next month, Tuesdays you can't get off because it's in the middle of summer and we would lose so much customers, and that's how we keep busy in the wintertime. Plus, every single call you go to in the middle of summer is worth a lot of money because, man, it's hot and they don't call for tune-ups. It's because something broke, right? And it's really important for the business and for yourself to make money when you can, right? So for the next month, it's gonna be really hard to get you those Tuesdays off. That's a totally different conversation than, nah, we don't have Tuesday. We can't give you Tuesday off anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
You know what I mean?
I understand that. Makes perfect sense. So you've done very well to iron out your busy and quieter periods. How do you think about doing that? Because I know air conditioning companies traditionally run rampant over summer and then have nothing in the winter, and heating companies the complete opposite, right?
Right.
So how have you made that consistent?
You sell a lot of agreements, so maintenance agreements are really important in any home service industry, but especially one as up and down as air conditioning seasonality wise. So the way you do it is number one, you market year round. So many companies make the mistake of starting advertising a month before their busy season and then stopping right after the busy season. You got to understand that the times where no one else is marketing is the time you pick up market share when it gets really busy. So that's part of it.
Yes.
And the biggest part of it is really learning how to talk to your customer base, selling maintenance agreements so you come out during the slow season, pushing some jobs that aren't relevant, that don't take time, or that make sense to for the slow season so you can keep your guys busy, and really getting good at communicating with customers so you can instantaneously drive sales to a point when you really need them.
So that's like in a direct marketing sense. Hey, we haven't serviced your whatever for however long.
Yep.
Can we come next week and do it?
Or, we do home and safety inspections, meaning like we look through the whole house, right? So we will look for, hey, do they have a carbon monoxide detector? How old's their wire here? How old's their AC system? Do they have a water softener? All these things, right? And we'll talk about it then if something sticks out, like, hey, your wire here is 10 years old, you probably want to replace it. But they can deny that. That's their choice and it's still okay. But when we're slow, guess what list we're going to go back to? We're going to say, hey, you noticed 2 months ago we recommended water here, and you decided to decline that. Now, we wanted to give you a quick call because we actually got this special pricing from our distributor. So we're actually replacing water heaters for this much, which is a this much discount. I was curious, what can't, do you mind if we schedule someone out? We can come out next week and save you that money because you're going to have to replace that water heater anyway.
So it's about being super proactive in those
Right.
low moments that I mean, you'd have good indicators on when that's about to turn, right? So you've got the record now to know when to preempt that. Yeah.
To a point, right? But see, that's something you could do within a day, right? This isn't like it takes a week to put that together. You preset that up. I could do that this morning and have calls this afternoon.
And are all the scripts, the training, all that's pre-done, obviously, on that, so you can just turn that switch and away you go. And the amount of people that you have working means that you can drive significant volume pretty quickly, I would have thought.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, one of the things that you've done recently is you've started RevuKangaroo, right, which I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about, which is basically a SaaS product for the service industry, right? So,
right, software, yeah, absolutely.
First of all, what's the story behind the name? How did you come up with that?
Honestly, like I'm talking to several people from Australia, like, where'd you come up with RevuKangaroo? It's like, honestly, it rhymed with review. There's no brilliant story to it. Like, I was going to move to Australia and I got obsessed. No, it's literally we're going through names and we just said, let's just start rhyming stuff with review. And eventually RevuKangaroo came out. It wasn't our top choice, but it kind of stayed there in one of our options. And then the more you heard, it's like, it's kind of catchy. I kind of like it. And I ended up just sticking with it. I love it now, but it's not like there was a real genius thought process behind it, to be honest.
Well, maybe we could have a chat about formulating a better story for that. We could throw in a bit of action from the outback.
We come up with something creative, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, RevuKangaroo, what is it? How does it work? What's the benefit of it? Because essentially what you've done is taken what's worked and you're now doing it for other people.
Correct, yeah. So I ran into the same issue that really everyone in the home service industry has, especially like a grudge purchase, like a plumbing company or an air conditioning company or electrician. So when I say grudge purchase, I mean no one wants to do business with us. Period. No one in my entire life is like, it'd be really great today to have a nice shiny new water heater.
Yes, so true. So true.
That's not real, right? So they don't want to do business with you. There's an issue 99% of the time. They're already inconvenienced. They're frustrated before you even get there. So no matter how good a job you do, it's hard to get really great social proof, really great feedback, really great reviews, right?
Sure
But
is.
anytime you make even a minor mistake, oh, it's really easy to get negative reviews because they're already so upset. So I was just like everybody else in the home service industry, where I could get some reviews, and I got reviews fairly consistently, but not a lot. But a lot of them would be negative, just because. I mean, I've seen reviews straight up where it was like we said they would be there between 8 and 10 in the morning. We got there at 9 a.m. and they loved everything about us, and they wrote that in the review, and they gave us 1 star because we were an hour late. It's like 9 o'clock's directly between 8 and 10. But customers hear what they want to hear, right?
I wish those stories weren't true, but
Oh, it happens all the time.
yeah, we get it too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the key to it, right? So I had this issue, and I knew I wasn't the only one that had this issue. So I started talking to all kinds of people here in the United States and throughout the industry, and started digging into, hey, is there something that we could buy? Does anybody know anything? And it really wasn't. Nothing that really worked. So I started getting feedback from everybody and saying, hey, what would the perfect system look like? And I started building. And essentially now what we do is we have an automated system, both by email and text message, where we automatically reach out to your customers. And not only do we ask for reviews, but we actively cross-sell for you. We help you sell maintenance agreements. We ask for referrals, all things you would want to happen every single time you do a call. But unless you're doing it yourself, a lot of times it's not happening, right? I can guarantee that happens. Now, what I do beyond that is that text message is going to send back to a system on your own website where I'm going to make it about one of your team members. So they never write a review on ABC Company. They write about a review on John the plumber at ABC Company because I changed the results by doing that significantly. It's hard to be negative, and I get much more results when it's personal.
That makes sense.
And
Yeah.
then I'm going to pre-screen reviews. So, hey, how was your service with John from 1 to 5 stars? If they had an amazing experience, I'm going to drive them out to Google to any review site that you want automatically. If they had a bad experience, I'm going to collect that customer's information and send that company's management team, a direct email saying this customer had an issue with this employee. Here's everything that happened, making sure anytime a customer complains, you have a chance to fix it and it doesn't become permanent anymore.
So if I can just jump in there, you send out this form, whatever it is, to fill in. They say, John was great, and then you said you push them to Google.
Yeah.
Do you send them like the link to review on Google, or is that automatically uploaded as a Google review? Like, how does that process actually done? And the reason that I ask is because reviews are really difficult to sometimes get done. They're kind of clunky, right? Like even like a Google review, a lot of people aren't logged in when they're searching, and then they've got to log in and they can't remember their password. And like it ends up into this big kind of, it's a hard thing to do. So to streamline that process makes total sense. So how does that work? Like do you push it out automatically, or do they then go to the site and re-enter in Google? Or how does it play out?
So here's how it works. I'm not having them fill out a form at all unless it's a bad experience. What I'm doing is I'm driving to a page on your website where they literally pick the team member they did business with. They can rate them from 1 to 5 stars, and based off that, I'm automatically going to push. If they had a 5 star, I can automatically push to Google, Facebook, wherever. Big difference is you're right. Like, hey, if they're not logged in, then you have to remember your password, wherever. I automatically log them in. I drive them directly to the page where they were already. There's no longer search. All they have to do is start typing. The only time I have them fill out a form is when I know they had a bad experience and I'm sending it directly to you because I want to get you all the details and all the ammo I can get for you.
Oh, okay. So it's how's your experience? Great. Okay. Can you go like click on this link and
Boom.
enter it in Google?
You're on Google.
How's your experience?
Yep.
Bad. Okay. Can you fill out this form, and then us as an internal company can work on ourselves to fix that? Have I got it?
Correct. Yeah, correct. And just kind of give you a reference, we can get anywhere from a 10 to 15% response rate. We've had some over 15%, but I think it's pretty rare. So if you were to run 100 calls, I could get you 15 reviews on third-party sites.
So the review landscape area, what's important? Is it stars? Is it consistency? Is it the words? Is it videos? Like what's the current state of play?
Yes. So it's a bunch of things.
Yes to everything?
Yeah. Average star rating is really important. You need to be at least a 4.4, ideally above a 4.6. Number of reviews is relevant to where you're at, but obviously very important. you got to understand this plays in multiple ways. Number one, its customers are going to choose you based off it, right? They saw a company that's a 4.4 and you're 4.4, and they have 10 reviews and you have 300. The choice is obvious, right?
Yes.
Recency is also important, but less important from customer perspective. It can be for the customer perspective. Some people look at reviews, most people don't. But from Google's perspective, it's very important because the higher and the more recent your reviews are, the more relevant, the higher average star rating, the higher you'll naturally rank on SEO. And then our system actually ties directly in with Google back on your website, creating content. So it really helps build the entire value of your website and essentially helps you show up significantly better when someone looks up your service. Or when someone looks up your own name, I actually push like other review systems like Facebook down the page instead of having them land on your own website, where clearly it's built for conversion and there are no competitors or nothing else to distract them, right?
So it's that theory of someone's looking, you're showing them that you're a good company to choose somewhere else, and then driving them through to or then they find their way, I guess, through to your own page where you put yourself in a much better position to actually convert them as a sale. Have I got that?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the key is like a lot of people don't really understand the value to reviews. Like our average client, just our average, grows 15% in additional revenue the first 6 months on the program. But that's not like our exciting numbers. Like that's the average.
Wow.
What people don't understand is if you have a competitor with 50 reviews and you got 8 reviews, there are tons, and I'm not talking about 1 and 2. There's a lot of customers you don't even know exist. I literally used to do this, or I still do, I guess, at speaking events. And if I'm talking to 1,000 people, right, I'll do a game and I'll pull up a literal Google search. There's 3 companies on the screen, right? Just the Google local section.
Yeah.
And I'll say, I want you to raise your hand when you pick a company. And I have 3 up there, right? And this is a real Google search here in Phoenix. And it's ABC Company, who has 80 reviews and is a 3.6. There's Blackwell Heating and Cooling, which is a 4.8 and has 8 reviews. And then there's Parker & Sons, and we have about, we're 4.8 and have 1,300 reviews in the last year. 1,300 5-star reviews in the last year. Which one of these would you choose? And out of 1,000, 990 plus choose Parker & Sons.
Well, it's just so obvious, right?
Well, it's so obvious. But here's the thing that people don't realize is if you were to take that 1,000 people, let's just for easy math say all 1,000 chose Parker & Sons. Your average ticket, like our average ticket, is $400. In that that room, that's 400 grand worth of revenue. And what's worse than that is if you were one of those other 2 companies, you don't even know that customer exists because you've chosen before you ever made a phone call, before you ever went to the website. Blackwell never had a chance to even win that customer. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Yeah, I'm just thinking through the scale of the numbers here. You're right. There's so much you just don't ever know about. You could never count it, but it's huge. I mean, if you're picking up the work, that's by default the work that the other 2 are missing out on, right?
Correct.
So when you're asking for a review, what sort of reviews? You said ones personally on the technician tend to work pretty well. Is there anything else in reviews that you see a trend with that really help your company?
Yeah, there's a lot of tips and techniques to actually asking for reviews. So a lot of people, they just send a link. It's like, hey, would you leave a review on Google for me? That really doesn't work almost at all. So number one, being personal is really important. So, hey, would you do me a favor? I always ask for a favor because it is what it is. They're doing a favor for you. They don't owe it to you in any way. Would you do me a favor and write me a review? Now, that's that technician, that's that plumber, that's that person, right?
Yep.
It only takes a minute. Here's a link. Now, ours drives right back to the system, but you could do it to Google. It's going to be less effective, but that's better than just doing a general link, right? It only takes a minute, and I would really appreciate it. I get recognized in front of my peers for great reviews, and if I made a mistake, I'd love to hear about it because I want to be the best technician I can be. Then the link. When you make it personal, you ask for a favor. It's just like anything else. Like you've written reviews before, right?
Sure, yeah.
When you wrote a review on what's a company you written a review
on? Childcare company recently.
So childcare company. Did you when you wrote that review and in your mind, were you thinking about the company or were you thinking about a specific person or maybe a couple people that were at that company that really influenced it.
Yeah, probably thinking back the teachers that are taking care of my kids certainly, and in relation to the education that they're getting. So probably not about the business really.
Right. I mean, really, the truth is, especially as a home service, I mean, that person that's out in your house is the business. Period.
Yeah,
No matter how good you answer the phone now, how good your marketing is, if that person's not good, company's not good, right?
couldn't agree
So
more.
what we're doing there is using that same psychology that you don't have a choice with to your advantage, right? So when people write reviews, they're generally doing it for a person. Now, if I make it about a person, I get a lot more reviews because that's what people want to do anyway. And if I make it seem, and it does help because I track it, right, that John is getting the benefit instead of ABC Company, which by the way both then they're much more likely to do it because they have a relationship with John. ABC Company it's a logo. That means nothing to them, right?
Sure. And then I guess when they call back, do they often request the same technician that came last time?
Absolutely, the greatest NPS score you could ever have, right?
I would say so, yeah. And a great way for your employees too to build some job
To build
security
their own business,
within your organisation. Yeah, I would have thought so.
Absolutely.
For the right a person in the right mindset, that makes total sense. So do you
Yeah.
see reviews, apart from obviously becoming more and more important, and I would have thought as Google comes into the service space as well, those reviews are going to be even more important than they are right now. So do you see anything changing apart from you need to do it and get more of them in the future, like how they're put together?
I mean, there's changes coming basically on, I mean, most lead generation systems, Google really is a lead generation system, are focusing more on reviews. But Google's been doing that for a while, but they're creating more and more traction with it. They're making it more important for SEO value, for how you're going to be found and the cost that you have when you buy ads. So that's changing somewhat. But truthfully, the biggest difference is, the gap between the haves and have-nots is really increasing very visually on reviews, right?
Yeah.
If your competitor has 40 today and you have 10, but they get 40 a year and you get 10 a year, it doesn't take long for it to be uncatchable in a way, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah, it's like, my business partner talks about SEO. So SEO is when you naturally show up on Google, right? So you're creating content to show up on Google. There were people who started it before SEO was ever a thing. Probably 15 years ago is when it first started. And you could dominate Google for $500 a month in SEO. Now, if you're in Phoenix, you're paying $25,000 a month. Now, here's the beauty: that $500 a month is still relevant now because they built so much content after so many years and had so much linking that they're still relevant, even though they're not competing or charging what the other people are charging or paying what the other people are paying, right? So I think that's the biggest change that we see coming. It's going to end up being a lot of companies that are slow adapters will be shoved out permanently from being able to compete there.
Yeah, we're all guilty of really underestimating how long that stuff plays out for, right?
Yeah. Well, it's really easy to say in retrospect, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. But when you're asking for that review at a one-off job situation, you're not thinking, as you said, 15 years from now, right, of how relevant that could actually be at that time. So it's kind of, you've got to think about I suppose, like the tangibility of that. Like this really does matter going forward. Small thing now, but adds up to be a really big thing later.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the thing with reviews is they're literally permanent. So what you get today, you live with for forever, as long as the business is in business.
Absolutely. I wanted to, just a few more questions, Josh,
Yeah.
and then we'll wrap up. But I wanted to ask you from a selfish point of view, how you keep track of all these employees that you have and how you manage all this information on a day-to-day basis, because you've got many technicians in many places and going many different directions. What do you use in terms of systems?
Well, we have CRM, so we're actually on Successware right now, but we're going to be switching over to Service Titan. That's our dispatching, our sales side of it, right?
Yep.
We create some internal systems that we use as well for training purposes and quality control. RevuKangaroo actually is built to do that as well, because it's actually every review you get is on the technician, both positive and negative. And we pull summary and trending information by every single employee consistently on a week basis and give report cards. And then, I mean, really, it's those are their main systems for tracking. It's just being aware. And then we have an in-house trainer, we have a ride-along program, there's a lot of stuff we do to keep on top of people, because the bigger you are, just it is what it is. You need more systems.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could click your fingers and have it all done, where do you sit personally in 10 years from now? Is it Parker and Sons, or is it growing RevuKangaroo? How do you see that going?
So I don't spend nearly as much time on Parkinson's. In fact, I spend almost no time on Parkinson's now, because it became so big, it just became unimportant.
Yeah.
So I need something to drive me. So I spend almost all my time on RevuKangaroo right now. That being said, I don't know what I'd be doing in 10 years. I'm not like a long term big goal person. That's not my lifestyle. Even with Parker and Sons, like I never set, it was never the goal to be $100 million company. It's not like Paul was like, you know what, in 13 years, we're going to be $100 million. Here's how we get it. It was purely like, how would I make $1,000 more a day than I did yesterday? That's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
focusing day to day.
When we were at 6.5, how do we get to 7? And once we hit 7, how do we get to 8? Once we got 8, how do we get to 10? And like we just kept blowing by numbers. Like, no, we should set higher goals. But it's all based off daily goals. That's the only thing you focus on, period. I'm not that 10 years from now, I want to be Parker and Sons be $500 million, which I don't even know if it's possible in the single market. But I also didn't think 100 million in the single market was possible, so who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose you don't want to restrict yourself by your own goals, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any advice for young men or young women who are just beginning their working careers and maybe looking at the trade sector? Any advice for really creating success in the field that they choose?
I mean, there's no shortcuts to success. It's a lot of effort, a lot of work, constant learning, always be a learner. I don't really watch TV. I listen to audiobooks instead of music. I go to a lot of conferences. I visit other businesses all the time to learn from them. Learning is really, really important. And then the most important thing of all things with a business is simplicity and execution, because simple is executable. So ideas are cheap, execution's what matters. So I don't go with anything that I can't explain within a minute, period, and really simply to people. And I think that's really been a big key to our success here is, making systems simple enough that anyone can execute it. And if you do that well, you'll do really well in life.
I agree with that. Just daily focus. Do you track I'm assuming you report and track on all of your numbers on a daily basis and they get reviewed?
Yes, every day.
Now, you said you listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Yes, all the time.
Have you got a recommendation or a favorite?
My favorite's still the first book I ever read, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's a classic.
Of course, yeah.
If you're looking for like a sales book, The Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort is amazing. Talks about some tonality, anchoring, some really cool, interesting stuff. Know Your Why by Simon Sinek is an amazing book. Kind of helps you reference what's actually important to you and how to use that to drive yourself and your business. Ultimately, everybody's a business, right? It's just whether you're a business of your own self or of other people, right? But
yeah, I agree.
those are just a few off the top of my head.
A question that I ask everyone: if you could have one law changed or implemented, what would it be?
One
changed or implemented? Yeah.
I'm gonna take this back to the service industry, because I don't know what it's like here in Australia, but here in the United States, every single city, like Phoenix is really made of 9 or 10 subsidies, right? Where it's like outskirts, it's suburbs, right?
Yep.
Each one has their own tax code, their own licensing. I wish there was a way just to make like statewide rules where they all play by the same game, because it gets so complicated and so confusing. It makes things so much more difficult to do business. So if I could do one thing to make everyone's life easier, I would do that.
No, it makes perfect sense. Just driving across a border or across a river or across a road and all the rules change, it doesn't make any sense, does it, when you're just trying to provide a good service and work your business. Now, do you have anything that you want to add, Josh, any parting words for my audience about RevuKangaroo or anything else that's going on?
Here's the only thing I would say. I love talking to people. I love helping people. We provide a bunch of training materials and promotional materials for people that we give away for free, because I think a rising tide rises up or lifts all boats, right? I want everybody to be better, because when everybody's better, it makes my life easier, it makes everyone's life easier. So if anyone ever wants to reach out to me or chat with me, you could either call me or email me. My email is real simple: josh@revukangaroo.com, REVU kangaroo.com. And just drop a line.
And the free training and resources and that you have, that can all be found on the same website, right?
So most of it can be found on the website. I also have videos on YouTube, or you can just shoot me an email, ask for them, I'll send you whatever you want.
Awesome. Well, cheers, Josh. I'm going to let you get back to your day, because I can only assume that you're an extremely busy guy. So I appreciate you carving out a bit of time for today and for your team to reaching out to me. It's been awesome talking, and certainly hope this is not the last time we talk. I think we've got a lot in common, and what you're doing for the industry is fantastic. And there's certainly a lot of opportunity for those who see it, are prepared to really put their head down and go for it, right?
Absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. It's been fun, and I enjoy it. Well, I'm definitely in for it again if you have a topic you want me to talk about.
Awesome. Cheers, Josh. RevuKangaroo. Hey everybody, it's Matt again. Thanks for listening. Just a couple of things before you guys clock off. You can get all Trench Talk episodes at xrm.com.au/podcast. You can also sign up for other goodies at the same site. Just plonk your email in there and you are covered. That's X for X-ray, R for Romeo, M for Mike.com.au/podcast. If you really like what I'm bringing you, please head to iTunes, subscribe to this show, and leave a review right there. And lastly, if you want to contact me directly, type the @ followed by Mr. Matt Reynolds into your search bar, and you'll find all the social links. Goodbye.